Okay, we are back. It is 12:44, and we left off with TSD and pass it right back to.
So we left off with TST. Did you want to?
Actually, can I say something before we move on? I talked to David during the break, and he mentioned that he's comfortable with the Medicaid match for the first 2 years, but he's not sure yet if it would be sustainable long-term. That's something that they're gonna be looking at in January and February to see what that situation is, but he wanted you to be aware of that.
Okay, I think we can have that discussion at a
Kick
later
the can
time.
down the road.
Yeah. I'm just like,
So we left off with the items that we were walking through in the packet and what that might look like in the financial plan. So this is just a rough look really quickly. So based on the plan that I received, the beginning fund balance for 2024 is just a 6.7 million. This is the revenue we're anticipating coming in. This is the maintenance level. We said we reduced community grants by 500,000, right? Okay, and then these are all the requests that we have currently placed into the fund. And so with a 10% reversion, that's the reversion amount. Total expenses, I'm gonna bring it down to the ending fund balance, you're at 4.7. If we do a 2-month ending fund balance, you're $2.8 million would be over the fund balance, ending fund balance that you would need, that reserve. It looks like the fund would go negative in 27. In 26, it looks like you might be a little under the 2-month fund balance, but this gives us enough time to look into the maintenance level, which the subcommittee or the TST committee was looking at, the maintenance level to see what was going on. And we can start scrubbing those numbers, and we may be able to find relief here.
How much do you think we would have to cut out of what we were spending in order to get that fund balance to be stable, like year to year?
And again, this is based on the slow recovery of revenues here too, so if
Right.
that picks up,
Yeah, I
that changes
understand.
things. So,
But if we were saying that we're not willing to accept that declining fund balance, how
We
much more would
started-
we have to take out?
We started the 750 was a little fat.
Yeah.
okay, so say I start in this year. Let's make sure that this is pulling everything. I don't want this to match. So let me make sure it's calculating everything.
And remember, the first year was a little less in many areas.
Yeah, so not to go negative 500,000, but yeah,
That's barely not negative.
You need to carry that into future years, Nicole. So.
I'll get my spreadsheet working. Give me 1 second. So 500,000 gives you a 1.4 ending fund balance in 27. You would be 700 underneath the 2-month reserve. Around 700. Around 700,000.
basically what we added on. It would have to just
Yeah.
be out.
So I didn't think it was quite that fat, but as Nicole said,
It's 2 factors.
where
in
we've
there.
landed is, gives us time to scrub the maintenance level, get our heads around what the committee recommended in reducing various offices and departments, see if any of that is really feasible,
Right.
and then, gives you a couple of years to see how things are actually playing out.
You may have some savings in this first year of what you added because
Exactly.
there was not starting in the
First year
beginning of
was
the
lower
year,
in
was
many
vacancy
cases.
savings, some stuff was starting halfway through the year, so these numbers are fully loaded. So that might give you a little bit of room as well.
So we're gonna leave it there for now then? Is you guys okay with that? Is that,
I think that this puts you in a good position for at least the first 2 years and time for us to scrub the
I mean, the
rest.
last couple of years has been kind of like TST did not spend anywhere near what they were budgeted.
No, this assumes a 10% reversion, but they've been reverting just the last few years. And bear in mind, those are COVID years, but they were reverting 17%, 21%, crazy high reversion.
But when we looked at pre-COVID, they were doing between 10 and 12% reversion.
Yeah. So we went with 10, but it could be way more still for a while. So I think that if you were to approve the package that is on the board, that you'd be okay, or you'd have time to say, okay, we gotta slow some things down.
And what does that equate to cut?
Around,
Well, that's what I was saying, it's about 700,000 maybe that we're squeezing out.
and, yeah,
Yeah, but does that equate to a 2% cut or
So what does what equate to a 2% of what?
what of, okay, we
TST
originally said
funding, Isn't it
8%.
like 8 million a year that comes into that fund?
yeah, we have,
So it's less than 1%.
So what would the total spending, yeah, that you'd possibly look at in the future?
Mhm.
Less than 1%.
Or, no, actually, is that 10%?
10%,
800,000.
it's 10%,
10% of 8 million.
7, it's 10.
8%.
8, that magic 8%.
Yeah.
So what's the final thing we're trying to accomplish here, right now? Are we thinking that, what do we tell everybody? What do we tell them? 4%, 2%?
Are you talking general fund?
Mhm.
We're not talking about the general fund right now,
Yeah,
we're
but-
talking about treatment sales tax.
But I know, but by the time we get there, is it comparable? And percentage wise,
No,
only in percentage?
no, not at all.
Okay.
Because you're not cutting TST,
We're expanding.
you're adding a
No,
lot
but I
of
mean,
things to it.
that same revenue source is gonna be a reflection probably in the general fund as well.
This reflects the slowdown in growth in sales tax.
Yeah.
Yes, just the same as in the general fund.
Right.
Exactly the same as in the general fund. But the treatment sales tax fund has not been overspending their revenue for the last few years.
No, that's true. But they might now because we boosted it a little bit.
No,
They're not
what
gonna
what
overspend
we've
it, but
recommended
yeah.
to you to fund still doesn't overspend.
Right, doesn't overspend it.
So do we have 3 thumbs up for the plan that you just saw?
As laid out.
as laid out, yes,
So how many
Yes,
white
I
spots
see
is that?
1,
Is that
2, 3 yeses, great.
thank you. So there are a couple other packets that we need to circle back, but I'm gonna save those packets to when we do the reductions. Like, there's some general fund impacts. For instance, like the pay increase slot, packet had the judge pro temp to see if we want to do that. That was a maybe when we get back to the cut exercise, to see if there was room to go to $75. So I'm gonna jump to policy new FTE.
Okay.
Okay, which one we going to?
Policy new FTE.
New FTE, it's pretty hefty.
Policy level FTE mandate, no, not that one.
No, not that one. Yeah, those had some decisions to be made along with the reduction, so I'll wait.
New FTE. Share my screen so we can see impact as we go. where we're at in the general fund, and that's with a $4 million cut.
So I'm started at line 3. This is for the, from the assessors asking for 2 property control analysts. We spoke about being able to shift funding to DD and veterans funding. I reached out to the assessor, I have an email here, and I'll have to get, again, a little bit further clarity, but he is saying that he is able to track his time, to have his employees track their time across those funding sources, and that he would be able to provide some savings to the general fund by doing that. I have to get clarifying on some of what he's speaking to and what that number would be, but he is saying that he can track his time and find some way to relieve the general fund by using those 2 funding sources.
So there were 2 options in this that I think we recommended. One was, is it a new FTE that can be billed to those funds? Or is it just a position that he already has and it could provide, like, you know, and he would just bill it out to these funds and provide that general savings fund? So did he say specifically which one was the preferred?
So I'm going to read the email because I just got it, and I'm going to read this one part here just to help answer this. So it says the additional FTE that were requested for the property control analyst says we have 8 employees in this class who are cross-trained to work with the seniors and veterans program. My projection is that that combined at least 2 of these positions, the time would be served for this program. See, I'm not sure what that means. I need to follow up. And then it says in 2004, the track time would be as high as 4 FTE as a result of 10,000 income threshold increase. So I just need to get clarifying on what he's actually saying
So
it would cover.
it
Yeah.
sounds to me like he's saying that 2 of his current FTEs are potentially doing so much work with veterans
Okay.
and
See,
disabled
No.
seniors. Seniors
see.
wouldn't count for the other fund, but the disabled and the veteran exemptions,
Okay.
that he could charge 2 FTEs
out of the
to
8,
these other funds out of
Okay.
the 8. And so if Linda Zyman, if you're watching, or
Zeman.
maybe if Steven's paying attention to this, he
Yeah.
could verify if that's accurate.
And if that is correct, then that does make sense, because he says as a result of an additional $10,000, because before that in his email, he speaks about asking for the reclass of one of his positions, the commercial
Yeah,
appraiser.
the board's saying no to reclasses.
Right, he's saying no, so that's why he's saying that he could get additional $10,000 to be able to cover that. Right.
Assessor Drew?
I am listening.
Perfect,
Great.
thank you.
I was trying to text a response, and I thank you for unmuting me.
Yes.
So, I think I sent you that email last night, and maybe it was less than perfectly clear, but I knew that time was of the essence, so I got it to you as quick as I could.
Thank you.
So what I'm proposing is that the FTEs that we're asking for in that department be granted, conditional on us tracking their time. And what I laid out in the letter is that is sort of a question, because I don't really know how what the correct measurement is. So what I want to do is clarify that, is that a pretty significant number of folks who are applying for the senior exemption program, one or both of the spouses have a military background. So that's one way to talk about whether we're providing relief to former military. The number of military applications that we have for those that are determined by DOD to be disabled is a much smaller number, and I don't have that data offhand. But we could, as part of our interview process and application process, ask every applicant if either of the spouses have a military background. And so by doing that, we could track the time to serve all of those customers that answer yes. And it would aggregate from a number of different FTEs, all trained to do the same thing, but we would simply track time and it would add up to FTE days and FT years, right? So if that makes sense, I mean, we wouldn't assign a separate specific FTE that would have to be called to the counter every time somebody answers yes to a military background. That's not efficient. They come to us randomly and we'd ask that question. And if they answer that they have a military background, then we would track our time against the measurement that was proposed. Does that help?
That's a percentage then? of-
Yeah, it was-
Yes,
Yeah.
that
Pieces
does
of
help.
many FTEs.
Mhm.
But did we clarify that we can even do this charging of this type of work to those funds?
We did
We
get
did.
an opinion from which
legal.
attorney weighed in on this one? Was it Rick or Travis?
I think it was Travis.
Yeah.
The answer was yes.
And the answer is yes.
So the thing I would just add, just so y'all understand when the pressure occurs, the pressure will occur on January 1 and be at its greatest for the first quarter of next year and continue throughout the year. But my point is that we need to, go to work on filling these FTEs as quickly as possible. We have one date certain extra help employee whose date certain is December 31. So if the budget was approved, this is a fully trained individual. We would continue as a permanent employee subject to this funding mechanism. That would require that we actually hire just one additional FTE to get people on staff for the peak workload that we have in the spring.
So, Assessor Drew, if I'm not mistaken, you're vying for the option of adding an employee, and then, so I'm wondering, with the very strong possibility of cuts, like just the offset of that.
Yeah, well, Commissioner, in my view, given the wave of work that's coming, not adding the employees is itself a cut. But I do understand your question. It may be in the end, when I know what the overall cuts to my general fund budget are, that in meeting with my management team, we will choose to add one employee and track an existing employee against the military support funding in order to reduce the positions that I need to eliminate. I haven't made that decision, Commissioner, because I don't know yet what the cut is to the general fund.
Okay.
Could that
We sent him a
same,
target,
I
so he
understand.
does know.
could that same process be used for disabled adults? I mean, it would carry over to that same question, or similar question, that would give you a certain percentage of time spent with those folks? And I don't know the definition of disabled, is it 10% or totally, or what's the deal there?
So, Commissioner, thank you for that. I know that in the senior exemption program, the specific category of disabled veteran hinges upon a percentage of disability determined by DOD. I think it's 80%. But there are an awful lot of seniors that qualify for the program and apply for the program that are disabled to a lesser degree, either due to military service or not. And then to your question, there are, as you know, I mean, there are a lot of seniors that have a wide range of disabilities. And so I can tell you that I can track that because I can ask every applicant this question and track the answers. What I need to know is which answers qualify for the funding. I don't have expertise there because this is all new to me. Does that help?
Yeah, well, it does, but I guess it would be, what would the auditors, what would an auditor say is eligible, I guess, would be the question. And could you benefit from the, folks that are disabled with Social Security, for an example, or some other process? I don't know exactly what categories are out there, but I'm just trying to help you attain that different funding source utilization, that's all.
I appreciate that very much. I will say that, we redesigned our office because a significant number of applicants to the senior exemption program require a chair in order to conduct the interview or come in a wheelchair or with a walker. And so to answer your question, I need to myself have some questions answered. What definitions of disability? That is, do you have to be receiving Social Security because of a disability? Seniors are already receiving Social Security, Commissioner.
Yeah, but there is a difference on if they're disabled or not from a tax perspective, but I don't know the answer to that myself.
So the funding that we
Neither do I.
receive, that would be available from Public Health and Social Services is specifically for developmentally disabled.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Assessor Drew.
Thank you. I very much appreciate the creativity. We're stressed and appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Could I ask one more question of Robin?
Of me,
Do you have a minute?
sure.
It's like, oh,
Your disposal.
It brings me back, I think I asked this yesterday, but you gave me an answer, it depends. And that is,
Always the right answer.
where are we headed on this whole reduction that we're talking about? Whether it's whatever, is it based on the baseline at the end of 2024? Or is it based on the baseline that we're creating are from 23 to 24?
It is, well, and this is why it depends, is the answer. It all depends on where the board is comfortable with this. If I can find my mouse, where are you? So that's, I hate technology.
Not as much as I do.
So if I,
There you are.
here it is. So this line right here is your ending fund balance in 2025.
Okay.
And it depends on how low the Board of County Commissioners is willing for this line to go. You have a policy that establishes that you will have budgets that result in a 2-month ending fund balance. So really, you shouldn't be going below this blue line or not far below this blue line. So how low will you all agree to go below the 2-month ending fund balance? And what are you comfortable with the future years looking like? Because already you're way below that 2-month ending fund balance in future years, and we'll need to take actions to bring that up if the revenue plays out as projected in the next 2 years. It also, this, again, I've said it a few times, this model reflects the policy level of decisions that you've already made which include, $2 million coming in from ARPA, an additional $1 million coming in from the road fund, and a $4 million budget reduction. And all the policy items that you've approved so far,
You say $1 million coming in from road fund, that's on top of the 1 million?
on top of what you're currently doing.
Oh, I thought it was 2 million on top of what we're currently
So let me just double check.
doing. 'Cause we're pretty
this-
early
this
on, so
graph
we need
has-
an extra million.
Oh, this how, yeah, no, you were correct. This graph does already reflect 2 million. So you wouldn't want to go much higher on the road fund.
Well, because it cuts into our serviceability out of the road.
Right, well, and as we've heard, the Public Works already redid their plan to accommodate an additional 2 million. If you choose to take more, which is your prerogative, we would need to go in and see what the road program would look like in the next few years.
But we know it would be reduced.
We just get through all these straggly
Yes, that
decisions so we
is-
can get to that conversation,
Yes.
because we just keep going on and on.
Okay, so that was a follow-up for that we needed to follow up on. So I don't know if a decision is needed to be made right now, or is this something you wanna?
I mean, if, I heard that he can add the FTEs and charge them 2 FTEs worth to those 2 funds, and I'm fine with that. And then if he has to use that for his cut exercise or whatever, that's a different thing that'll happen later. But at this
Okay.
point,
This
And
adds,
if it's
this
legal,
adds
and if everything's legal.
one FT.
Two
Two.
FTEs.
so is that, I mean, is there anybody who wants to argue against that?
No, but I think
Okay.
there needs to be something like, not sure if there has to be like a proviso written in there, right, that it's gonna be specifically for this, just because then I don't think any one of us wants to be in a position where if, not to say that there isn't the work, the assessor has pretty much said that there is, but for some reason there isn't that amount, then there's gonna be the general fund impact that we weren't
You
expecting.
tell us how to structure what he described,
Yeah,
but we're supportive, it sounds like.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
It
so.
can be legally and.
But then I do have a follow-up question. At what point are we gonna impose the reduction? After we've
After we're
given
done.
these-
We gotta get all these
Through all
decisions
of
made.
these
And then we
and
know what that
see
looks like.
just
and
how
then we-
bad
That's why I
the
wanna
graph
get through all
looks.
these.
Okay.
Individualized line items.
Okay.
All right, so then that's 3 yeses, right, with the split funding?
Yeah.
Okay. So then the other one is, line 9, Superior Court, we're following up on that. This was to ask the Superior Court as well if they wanted to use, family court fund for any portion of their FTE. And Jennifer, you said you didn't necessarily get a response.
No.
Well, we could still say if they would like to.
So their reply was,
Their reply was the court has not determined the potential use of the fund at this time. They did not say if it was, they didn't say that it wasn't available to be used for this. They just said that they have not determined the potential use.
So that's a no.
so it's a no.
No.
Okay.
Pretty simple, I guess.
Yep.
Page 5, the prosecuting attorney, you add the community program manager, you asked us if this is 100% grant funding. And what was the follow-up on that?
Where are we? Nicole, which page?
Page 5, line 18.
This one, they were still trying to sort things out on. I'm trying to find my response.
And that is, yeah.
They said they have some authority of Target Zero on the book. She's reviewing the revenue and expenses to be clear what is needed and asking for direction from the prosecutor and Christie. I will see if she's gotten anything from them and let you know.
Well, can we just say it's denied unless it's grant funded?
Unless it's
Yes.
fully grant funded,
Yeah.
yes, you can say
That's-
that.
You can-
Let's just say that and move on.
Okay.
All right, so that's a no. unless they get more information.
That's my last follow-up that I have for that packet.
No. So 21, that's not to follow up, but that
Line
should be no.
21?
Line 21, that should be a no now.
Funding for digital discovery repository.
Yeah, we already discussed that.
Yeah, they already discussed that one, they said no.
So I had a return on that one.
But they said no to the positions, and they said yes to Axon,
Correct.
Right.
so.
We were still under discussion when I had that one. No, there was, lines 57 and 58. Lines 57. Okay, so line 55 and 57 last night, there was conversation about if the HR position could be funded out of foundational public health or public works.
And we heard
Spoke with
yes.
us, we heard yes.
We heard yes, so we reached out to Maria and asked her which of these positions she would prefer. And she said that she actually, it sounds like it would be the human resource specialist, which is the lower paid position, but she also said that she had one of these that was on a reduction, and instead of adding two and reducing one, she said the reduction package would, like, instead of reducing that, shift that one instead of reducing it, was what she.
So she's asking for what FTE?
The,
She would ask to use the public health funding instead of cutting an FTE.
right. So
If-
no to, it would
if
be
she
no to
needs
these
to
two,
take that.
and then,
Otherwise, if she doesn't need to, depending on what the reduction amount is, she would take line 57.
correct.
Line 57 with Public Works.
Public health, whichever fund,
Public
whichever other funding sources.
Line 57 shows your general
Can
fund.
we charge one to Public Works as well? So
Yeah, that was the direction. It was one for public,
one for
whichever,
Public Health and one
for Public Works. With all the positions we approved, that was the
I
direction.
thought that was the
Okay.
decision already
Yeah.
made, yeah,
Okay.
okay.
But since she already has, the position she has can be part of that reduction as well. So we're only granting one new position, it sounds like.
Right.
Okay.
So then it would be the specialist position that she would want.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Do you have anything else?
I don't know. Let me skim through the packet really quick to make sure.
Line 69, thank you. Facilities control specialist.
Hmm.
We spoke about, this was a maybe, the position was $117,000 out of the Central Service Facilities Fund. We said that we would look to see if we could do a reduction. Speaking with the facilities manager, he's able to find $55,000 in professional services, right?
Yes.
To be able to decrease, to offset the cost of this, position.
So it's what, costs what,
So 117,
65 or something, or 70?
17 minutes.
117,
It's not a general fund.
It's not general
It
fund.
goes through the cost plan.
62,000.
So instead of 117 being it, 60-40 split, it would be
59.
more like 50,000 at a 50-40 split,
Yeah.
60-40.
So you're looking at a $30,000 impact to the general fund 2 years out? Is this one on the 2-year lag? So outside of the biennium.
This was a maybe?
This was a
I think this was a maybe for me, I think. Right?
I didn't, but who said maybe, we asked to return to this.
and maybe and a reduction to follow is my note.
Is this, would like to request adding a new classification, an additional FTE. Is that at all similar to what we're
The
telling?
reclass is known
reclass?
as not.
But half of it or something's gonna come out of, more than half's gonna come out of general fund, right?
Half of it will be covered by a reduction in contracts because we have to bring people on contracts to pay for this now. So it's gonna be offset. The total new cost is not 117. It could be
Around
closer to
60.
50,000.
And that'll be against the general fund?
And that would reduce the impact to the general fund. It doesn't eliminate the impact to the general fund. However, if it's a matter of this needs to be a net zero impact, I would find another 50,000 in professional or other services within central services to reduce. Because my facilities team, we've added so many square feet in the last 2 years. We need another FTE.
When this line says that facility should have a staff of 34 employees per the standard of the International Facility Management Association, doesn't say how many we have or how many this would make.
We have like 16. We've got about half of what we ought to have according to industry standards.
It's kind of like our parks compared to Lacey Parks.
Kind of.
Really, I mean, something similar there. Well, I mean, if you can juggle all those balls, I don't know how we can complain too much. I mean, if it doesn't hit the general fund.
Well, it hits the general fund by 30,000.
It does still hit
I-
30? I thought you said you could do it without
I
it.
am thinking that I could find another 50,000 to reduce in central services to net this to zero. If I can do that, great.
Okay.
Right, I have no more folded
One of
papers.
those, that was easy buttons.
Pleasant to do. I would like one of those buttons.
Yeah, I'm just.
It's doing this whole packet.
She's
I'm
double
double
checking,
checking.
but
We're checking.
that was for us, I mentioned.
No.
That was just a TST conversation.
Oh, boy.
Now what?
I don't think we're there. Are we there
Line
yet?
115 on page 31. Is
We were
that
just
one
talking
so?
about that.
I don't think this was built into the TST plan, was it?
Yes, it's in the
Oh,
financial
this is
plan.
part of the TST that they just decided,
I
never
have it in
mind.
there right now at 37,579. Yep,
Okay.
it's built in the financial plan that we just approved.
All right,
Yep, so we're
so
done
that
with
was
that.
Done with that packet.
Yes.
Are we done with it?
Now what?
ta-da, all the new FTEs are done.
Right, so we just went through the policy level yesterday, right? And I know there was some follow-up to that.
As we're moving on here,
Where did you find out about one?
when we get done, we're gonna have to inform
I didn't.
our employees and staff kind of where we're going, and I don't know exactly when we're gonna do that. But when we decide to do it, could you put together
I'm sorry.
a short synopsis, shorter than a Reader's Digest version, a preamble, if you will, to what we're doing here, but somehow explain that we did add whatever we did to the general fund, and to roads, we did whatever we did to roads, and to public health. Those funds that have other than general fund sources, so that the public and our employees can see why we did what we did. And I'm just gonna use an example of public health. Okay, so, I don't know, what did we add? 40? I don't know what we added. I can't remember.
Probably about 35.
I've got a headache from it. Okay, but nonetheless, we did what we felt we needed to do based on, if we didn't do it, we got the money coming in. And if we didn't do it, then we had to send some money back. So that at least they'll know, because of the funding source, we did what we had to do, and kind of clarify that
Right.
for the folks.
Do our best to lay it out.
And I expect I would see something like that in the media at some point, and it might
I will.
clarify the media, rather than our distractors, trying to pencil it all out and furnishing that information to the media that may be erroneous. You see where I'm kind of
We
going with this?
absolutely do our best to get our story out there.
Okay.
Yes,
As I
we
can-
will, we
I can
will.
see there'll be opposition to the story.
In the time we have to produce the budget book, Nicole and I have discussed producing also like a budget highlights,
Okay.
much like the governor does. And the matter is time and staff to get something like that done.
And you don't need to point your finger at anybody in particular.
We're not
but you have to-
pointing our fingers
have
at
to
anybody.
justify
We just
why.
wanna show what we've done.
Why we did what we did.
Yeah,
Right.
it's nobody's fault that we're in this position.
just
I
the
wanna make very clear,
It's the
it's the
situation we're
position
in.
that we're in.
Yeah.
It's, the revenue is flat due to the economy and the, costs are rising due to inflation. And that's what puts us in this.
And I'm not gonna write the story about what I always say. I'm gonna leave it alone. I just wanna get through it.
All right,
No,
so
and-
let's keep going to get
We're
through it.
not the
Okay.
only county going through this.
Absolutely.
We've heard of so many counties across Washington state who are.
Yes.
And now municipalities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yep,
cities as well.
and the
too.
cities. We are not alone.
So policy level, page 2, line 4.
Let's see. Okay, not the FTE policy, just
Just policy,
Policy
regular
level.
PL, that's it, just policy, right?
yes.
Line, or packet 20.
Yes, packet 1.
Okay,
Line
what,
are you on?
on page 4,
Page 1, page 2.
Are we on one?
Auditor, purchase recording implement.
Yes, so $600,000, we were following up on that because of possibly the auditor moving some positions into.
excuse me, okay, I wanna make sure I'm on the right setup here. On, did you say page,
Page
2.
oh, page 2? Okay, I thought you said 4. Huh?
So I remember this one, and
Okay.
the auditor basically said, if we have to make any cuts, she won't be able to do this. Well, we know that's gonna be true, so let's just, what's the point of approving it?
Right, so I got an email from the auditor, and that's basically what she's mentioned today, that I received this morning, saying that she would have to move the new reporting system outside of the biennium, so move from 25 to 27. She presented an updated financial plan where she would propose moving positions into the M&O fund, or into this preservation fund, excuse me.
So then this one's a
How
no,
many
just
dollars are we talking about?
600,000.
$600,000
And she's got it?
in the M and O fund, but
She would have.
the way she could reduce any cut would be to move positions into that fund. So it would displace this purchase of equipment in order to
Until
get
later,
things out of the
till later
general
date.
fund. Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
So the answer for this is not now.
Not now.
yeah.
And then this leads us to the clerk's position. She mentions that she would not be able to unfortunately fund the clerk's position as well.
And which number is this? Is that-
So the clerk's position is in your end date packet. And, which is packet number 15, and it's line 2.
So,
Did you say page 15 line?
Packet
No,
15,
it's-
the end
it's
date,
a
the end date
different
package.
package. This, the clerk's ask is here.
Okay, and that's that shared fund that they use?
Yes,
But the sharing's over.
yes.
Because we're asking the auditor to
If
make
Mary
cut.
needs to shift her staff into this, then she's not gonna share with the clerk.
okay, line 9 is for the substance abuse monitoring program, so this brings us to the ARPA conversation. We.
Scram bracelet,
Yes.
district court.
Yes. So we've been working with our financial staff, Diana, and we've been working, me and Robin together to find funding for Scram. So we believe that we will be able to find funding out of ARPA to support
I
this
think
for
we
one
can
more
carve one
year.
more year of this out of ARPA.
Okay.
Let's just go with that.
So, yep, okay, good.
So scratch out general fund, that's the part.
Scratch out general
ARPA.
fund, change it to ARPA,
Okay.
1 year only.
I am just making sure I don't have any more notes.
And then does that, even though it's 1 year, does that raise our baseline? How do we?
Not
how do
in
we
general
address it?
fund, because we're gonna pay it out of ARPA.
Okay.
Just give me a moment, sorry. This is all Public Works. I don't have any more updates. Do you have any more follow-ups?
I have something, but I don't remember what I asked about, so.
Stormwater for 3602.
What page are we
Flood
on?
hazard mitigation plan, but you approved that as long as it's stormwater and not general fund, so that's not a follow-up.
Okay.
I don't have any more follow-up for this packet to you.
That's it, out of the policy?
Jennifer's
I
double
have-
checking.
I have something potentially.
This is Diana. I also have a question.
Not now, Diana, we'll circle back with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
She has a hard enough time keeping us on track.
Her question is gonna be where it's coming from. We'll catch her.
That's not the question.
All right, so she's double checking. I'm gonna let Jennifer continue double checking, but we can move on.
We had a question about, so this was a follow-up to ARPA positions and the prosecuting attorney where we were trying to figure out when they had been vacated, so it's not in here, but
It's in the other, remove the FTE end date packet.
possibly, because we had questions about 2 prosecuting attorney FTEs and if they had been filled or when they had become vacated. And one was,
Talking
No.
about line 10.
no, that's victim advocate. When we were talking about the ARP positions last night. One position became vacant in January of 2023 and one is regular.
That's
And
with our
one
analysis,
was-
so that's not a follow-up.
So here's an update to our ARPA proposal.
I just saw this and it was 2
So
questions.
thank you for that. We're proposing that the continuation into 2024 of paying, or 2025, paying for backlog cases with ARPA is only for the positions that are currently filled. That we would allow the end dates to end on any position that's vacant. And some have remained vacant because they're filling positions that are permanent before they fill these positions with end dates. So instead of 4 attorneys, the prosecutor would get 3 attorneys on for that extra year. Instead of 2 legal assistants, they'd get 1. So
Right,
that way they can continue with their current effort for backlog, and that's what creates the capacity for the scram, including taking down unneeded money in the video booth
right.
project. So that is what we are proposing.
Okay.
Is that the
Yes.
clarification you
Yes.
needed? That's what we're doing.
And I do have one other follow-up, which was on line 16, which was the replacement of the AEDs for the sheriff law enforcement, and you asked if Minute One could fund that. And the answer was maybe. It was the 10-year plan is kind of tight, and they they would say no to all of it. They want to be a team player. So they would consider what it would look like to outfit only patrol vehicles that are actively patrolling Thurston County roadways, not command vehicles, jail, admin vehicles, et cetera. And see what the cost might look like and approach the EMS council on
Is
this.
that the defibrillators?
Yes.
That makes sense.
Okay.
You're not having detectives
So
respond.
the board's decision was yes, if we could find another source of funds, so
So that's
let's
not really
go.
a follow-up.
We-
Okay,
So
I
let's
just
go.
wanted to let you know, cause that was the
Bob
question.
and I
of
are
the-
getting older.
You're done.
I wanna make sure we get to everything and we're done today.
So I say we move into end date because this starts to impact
So
your
there's
reduction.
nothing else in this policy packet
That
that we
we're
needed
supposed
to
to follow
come
up?
out? I'm feeling pretty good.
Like the last, I think, almost 10 pages or more is Public Works and we took care
Yep,
of
and
that.
that's been resolved.
That's why there was
All
no
right.
lots to follow up. So policy level end date, and this is gonna start impacting the graph here that Robin is showing. So not necessarily the first one I'm gonna get to, we just discussed this. This is the clerk's request for funding out of the auditor's fund. And so the auditor said she's not gonna be able to do that. So just officially, yours is a
No.
three thumbs.
So that's enough.
That's a no. Okay. And then line 4, Robin just spoke to this. This is the extension of the ARPA positions. And so we just discussed how we were gonna take care of that with extending the ones that are full. The ones that are not filled, we will not be extending. So I just need a thumbs up for that too. And then, line 5. This is the removing of the FTE in the commissioner's office and also in IT. And I believe they did that approval already, right?
Sherry spoke to that. I don't know if the board took action at the time she talked about it. I didn't
I think on the
so.
table it was through at least twenty
No,
twenty-four.
yeah, I thought the decision point for this was leave it until,
24.
December 2024. And then
Okay.
at that time, you would,
So this packet is done then. So policy level pay increase. There's just one on this. And this is the judge pro temp. They're at $50 an hour. They'd like to go to 100. So last
But
we spoke.
didn't we say 75? I thought we talked
That
about
was the
that.
proposal, but to come back when we get closer towards the end.
So that would be,
Of
if
15.
we went to 75 instead of 100, it'd be roughly $15,000 that we would add. And if I add 15,000 at this time, 606.
I might not even be able to see a change up there.
Exactly.
You might not.
If it's not gonna be enough
I'm
to
watching to see if it does.
push this
I don't think it
either
will.
way. And no.
Saw it move.
You saw
Did you really? Did you?
It just flashed, right?
I saw.
No, show me where it, show
No,
me
so
where you
watch,
saw
I'm
it.
gonna take it out,
I looked right here.
ready?
This one went. See? Look
Oh.
at this.
And then I'll put it back. Tiny little move.
So a vote on that.
But I still can't tell if it went up or, I mean, that little bit of movement, they still look like they're even.
They're pretty much where they're at. So
A vote.
thumbs up to half this much.
we're gonna go through the list of everything we've approved, right? And
We are, when, in just a few minutes when we get to the, and what was that was a no on the court commissioner salary adjustment.
Right, that was
No, maybe no.
okay, so that's done. And then the last packet I have before we get to reductions is Healthy Lakes again. You said we were gonna circle back to see if we want to do the $27,000.
So let's take a short break so that I can confer with Nicole and we could print you a list of everything that you said yes to in the general fund. And show you the new layout for the reduction package. All right.
10 minutes? We are back from break. It is 2:12 PM and we left off with seeing what we had approved. Robin has printed out a sheet for us. And I'll pass it on to Nicole. Robin?
And I think she should jump right into that model.
Yeah, it's on me now. So I'm gonna share the model, one more time and, how do I do that? Share my screen on Excel. Here's the model. And again, here's what it includes. It includes maintenance level funding, full maintenance level that everyone requested and was calculated at. Then it includes an extra 2 million in ARPA money coming into the general fund for the new positions. It includes an increase in our road levy shift of $2 million. There is, on the expenditure side, and money to cover the COLA that the board has authorized for collective bargaining. And I can't say exactly how much that is yet because the contracts are not settled, but we estimated what it's worth and that's included in the model. There is $5.4 million in policy ads in 2024 with 2.4 million in revenue to back that up. So roughly $3 million in new spending without revenue. And in 2025, there's 3.8 million in policy ads with $1.3 million to back that up. So approximately 2.5 million in new spending, which is in part ongoing from year one, in 2025. And this model includes an assumption of a $4 million budget reduction.
So why does it look a lot different than when we took a break?
Because the thing that, it doesn't look a lot different, the out years are down a little, but I was missing a few items. That's why I needed to spend time with Nicole and Jennifer to make sure that I had captured all of the decisions.
Okay.
So I have now. There's one item that we don't have a decision on, we discovered that we need to circle back to, and that is the chief deputy coroner. So you don't have to decide that right now. But we're gonna leave the model for a moment. And instead, I'm going to share what a reduction distribution of $4 million might look like.
Okay.
Okay, so bear with me for a minute.
Let me just
Where's
clarify something, then, and also you have not dipped into the rainy day fund at the, in any
At this
of
point,
those.
I have not dipped
Okay.
into the rainy day fund.
Yeah.
That is true.
I think it's raining out, by the way, regardless if the sun is
I
shining.
don't see overspending our revenue as raining, but that's, we can agree to disagree on that. So what you're looking at here is a worksheet that I've not printed out for you, but I can, but first I wanted a conversation. Because it's what do you wanna include and exclude in a cut exercise? So this first column is by office and department, the 2023 budget. Then here's the 2024 maintenance level, and this percentage now is a percent of the total budget. So for example, the assessor's budget of 5.4 million is 4.1% of the total general fund budget of $134 million. That's how to read the column in this salmon color. Then I started, based on a lot of feedback that the budget team has received from many, many people, I started thinking about how can we adjust the number that the reduction is based on. So this first column, and I'm gonna call them exemptions, the first exemption is for grants or restricted funding. And this is based on 2023. I did not have the ability to go in and sort it in Questica to look at the 24 maintenance level, but using the 2023 budget as a proxy, for example, these are grants and money that is restricted for a specific purpose. So for the auditor, which is the first row, there in the 23 budget that's in Questica is $2 million in grants and funding that is restricted to the purpose of elections. She brings in elections money. That elections money can't be spent on a clerk or the court or sheriff or any other thing. It's got to be spent on elections. So the first thing I did was exempt restricted money in the general fund, and I did that for every office and department. And there is just under 17 million of our revenue is this restricted money in the general fund. The next thing.
And that's out of how much?
Out of, I'd have to look at the total revenue. But it's out of about, this exempts 17 million out of 134. The next item I did is internal service rates. What is billed out through those interfund costs? So all of these are through the cost plan and create revenue into the general fund. So I went to the 2023 cost plan and I looked at how much money is billable out of the departments that are part of the cost plan. So for example, again, the auditor's office, financial services is billed out through the cost plan. And according to the cost plan, $2.4 million of the cost of financial services is billable. So I exempted the cost plan amounts. The next column, and just to give you a bottom line, 13.2 million is billed out through the cost plan in the auditor's office, the commissioner's office. Community planning is billed out through the cost plan. So is a portion of emergency management, interestingly enough. Human resources, not all, but most of the department is billed out through the cost plan. Non-departmental, a chunk is billed out. The prosecuting attorney's office, the civil division, and then the treasurer's office. That's what goes through the cost plan.
Can you just spell out in a little bit more detail the logic behind why that amount should be removed from this exercise?
Because this is an internal service and it goes out through the cost plan and generates revenue into the general fund. So you can remove this and it would reduce the revenue coming into the general fund.
Not 1-to-1, but 60-40 or something?
60-40 roughly, yes. So, the next column is the 24/7, which we were already exempting, but I've refined this a little and I need to work on these numbers. They need to be a little better. The coroner, The entire office is 24/7, so I removed the rest of the budget for the coroner. The juvenile court, I wasn't sure, how much should it be?
2.7.
2.7? I did 3, so there's 2.7, is the part of juvenile court that is the youth detention facility, that's 24/7. The entire adult jail is a 24/7 operation. Now, this is where we need to have a conversation with Heidi. We had asked her how much of the sheriff's office was 24/7. And Jennifer, what was Heidi's response? I don't want to get it wrong.
Heidi's response was that it was difficult to give a real number because everybody's kind of mixed in. So with juvenile court, they have one org code that is the court, the juvenile facility staff. So it's really easy to identify which of their operation is 24/7. But with the sheriff's law enforcement, you got people all mixed in, so you'd have to go in and identify the people.
Partial FTEs here and there and
Right.
everywhere.
So off the top of their head, it's just not like, hey, look at this is what it would be.
So it didn't have any idea?
She would have to do a little bit more work to figure out what the number is.
Right, so we do need to have a conversation with Heidi to refine this number, but what I did, because we needed a number today, what I did was say, I took all of the org codes in the sheriff's office associated with the patrol, that are based on the report that Heidi gives us for the road diversion, and added up all of the costs in those orgs that are currently budgeted, and that comes to $2 million. So we'll get to that in a minute. So the total cost of 24/7 operations, and the amount for the sheriff is probably not enough, but it's a proxy, if you will. 24/7 costs are $36.4 million out of this budget that I would exempt. And then the board had given direction at the beginning of the cut exercise that offices that are less than 2 million in general fund would be exempted. So I pulled those costs out. That is pretrial services, public health, public works, social services in public health and social services, and that adds up to $2.5 million. So some offices, once you pull out all the exemptions, and in total, the exemptions added up to 69.1 million, a lot. It doesn't leave a lot, and this is where the team's been telling you this is complicated, and once you start pulling stuff out, it's pretty soon you're left with, $10 that you can cut. But it leaves $65 million that is not generating revenue or restricted to a very specific purpose, or a 24/7 operation that's currently minimally staffed to distribute the cut on. And the offices that are completely excused from the cut under this exercise are the coroner, pretrial services, public health, although public health is giving up $100,000 in the transfer. Public works, so parks is basically exempt from the cut. Corrections completely exempt. Social services, their whole budget is only $25,000 out of the general fund, and the treasurer would be exempt. Of the remaining offices, I said if we did a $4 million cut, here's how it would get distributed. And in almost every case, it is less by some, not always a lot, but usually less. But this includes a portion of the sheriff's office. So the sheriff's law enforcement would be part of this reduction exercise if you were to go with this scenario. And I'm not recommending that this be the scenario, I'm just laying out an option for you. So here's how it compares to the original cut that you had sent out. And I am prepared now to either include or exclude any of these 4 exemptions and tell you what the impact would be on the cut and make the reduction whatever amount you want that you're comfortable with, that 2025 ending fund balance falling right around the 2-month ending reserve line, ending fund balance line. So that's this. Is that kind of what you were looking for? Sorta?
That's good, I mean, it's,
Right. So, and at this point, I would also say that we have reductions. So for example, even though the reduction in non-departmental using this scenario would be $376,000, I would propose to you that we could pull $1 million out of non-departmental.
Can we plug that in, kind of just see?
So I don't have the numbers working right to just plot it in, but what I can do, I know how I can do it. I can make this 3 million. Is that enough zeros? Yes. And I can exempt non-departmental.
Is that so you don't double count it?
Since we're doing $1 million out of non.
And if we say that these are the reductions that you actually take, I would put $1 million at non-departmental. I think that's too big. Anyway, I could work with that number. Yeah, that's too much. Cause we can't cut 10 million out of non-departmental, but you can take $1 million. And, well, 1, 2, 3, and now put it on the right line. And if you add it to this 3 million, you get to 4. I would also say that in the commissioner's office, even though this calculates 74,000, we had come up with 268,000. I would say that the commissioner's office would still cut 268. Take that down. And that further reduces the impact to other offices and departments.
before we get too comfortable with these reduced numbers, I mean, can you go back to the model?
Yes.
Because I was barely comfortable with it the way it looked before, and with these new additions that you've made, I don't think I can accept it. I mean, the out years dropping below cash flow is not something that I can support.
I'm not comfortable with it.
And, before it was already, about halfway or a third of the way, or 2/3 of the way down between our target and our absolute minimum. And that was,
But you haven't reduced their baseline by a percentage yet of those that are eligible yet, right? So won't that come up just a little bit when you do that?
What do you mean, Commissioner, reduce the baseline?
Well,
That has a $4 billion reduction built in.
yes, but of who you're going to take that from, that's still gonna be that $4 million,
Yes.
is that it?
For,
And it doesn't, you don't address that 1 million you just took out of
That's part of the 4 million.
Oh, it is.
That's just an allocation of
Oh, okay.
that's why I wanna go back and say,
Right.
is 4 million the target or is it bigger? Then we can get back to the allocation exercise, but with this new updated graph, I don't know that the 4 million is where I feel comfortable. I mean, we get through the next 2 years, that's fine, but
After that, it just drops.
it's just gonna get more and more brutal.
Well, the only thing that can be reduced without affecting anything, unless we have a problem, is the rainy day fund.
But the rainy day fund is just,
It's a one-time.
It's a one-time.
It's one, I know, it's one time at 4 million, it's 2 times at 2 million, it's 4
Well,
times.
and then it's gone. It's gone.
Pardon?
And then it's gone forever.
And then it's gone, yeah, but we went a lot of years without it before we created it, so.
So let's look at if you pulled 2 million out of the rainy day fund, what this would look like.
something.
Here's what 1 million out of the rainy day fund would look like. It's a one-time fix for an ongoing issue. Here's what, this is no money out of the rainy day fund, and this is increasing the reduction to let's set it at 5 million.
And how about with the general fund change request, instead of the 3 million, if we go maybe down to 2?
So which items would you take off this list?
I think,
So that is the next thing we can do, is scrub this list and see if there's anything you'd like to take
If
off.
we can get 1 million here or 1 million out of here, this is what I can live with. And this is I wanna point out, this is already doing exactly what the prosecutor advocated for, right?
Yes,
It's basically hedging our future on an
on the
upturn.
economy turning around.
So it's really doing with the cut what he was advising that we do, which is not, otherwise we would have a model that kept us at our target line.
Right, so let's say you did no cut this year, let's say for just a moment that you approved all of these things that you've said yes to, made no reduction this year, and instead the reduction next year to get you to a better place, because you'd wait a year to see how things played out. Oh, it wouldn't need to be that much. It'd need to be around $7 million
Next year.
next year.
Well, we can,
So significantly more.
we'd save a lot of money through vacancies though, cause everybody'd leave the ship.
That's a $7 million cut with the shifts, right? The 2 million in shift? Does that include the road levy shift?
Yeah, that, it would include all the other shifts we've been talking about. Plus 7 million in cuts next year.
That's what you got your eye on, Commissioner.
So I'm gonna stop sharing this.
okay,
Actually, we will keep that.
so it doesn't serve us to cut the stuff with revenue on it, I guess.
That's right. I wish I'd brought my ruler down here.
So do I have a
I
highlighter?
need my ruler.
Highlighter?
Yep.
No. I know that the coroner needs some help, but I don't think he needs a chief at this point. He's not gonna be happy with that, but.
75%.
So the funding for contract increase for corrections,
Which line are you on?
B1101.
That's the food services.
I understand that. I know that Commissioner Menser said that we could even go a little bit
Well, I
lower
was
than
just
that.
doing the math, 75% of that, I think, is 270. Robin had just thrown 300 out there, I think it was 361, am I right about that? And I said, if you take 75% of that, it's 260, 270. There's 30, but
So 270.
Why not just cut it by a third? See where it ends up. Take 100,000 off of there,
Off of that 3.
off the 3.
So that cuts it almost in half compared to what they asked for.
We're gonna make it 270.
It's already reduced.
That would be
What's the streamlined department management administration operations?
What's the B number?
B2401.
That is public defense, they have an offsetting reduction in their policy level request of 140 as well, so it offsets.
It offsets,
Yeah,
okay.
you see their reduction there.
I mean, the CPID things are the really huge items, nothing we can do about them.
And the one next, right below it, B2406, it's for 231,000, what is that?
It has corresponding revenue.
Comes with revenue. See,
That's a revenue.
it's a net effect, net zero.
Could we put an asterisk behind all these that come with revenue?
If,
We wouldn't
if
have to
there's
be thinking
something
about
in the revenue column,
Okay, then
that's
it
the
comes
revenue.
with revenue,
Yep.
okay.
Some of them, these are not tied, like, it's not, for example, the 2 positions for the PIO, it's not, the revenue's not there, it's until the bottom that the TC Media contract is there.
that's true.
That's true.
2305 is the TC Media.
And then also the ones that say Blake, they have offsetting revenue, so B 0501, 0604, 0909, that they have offsetting
I
revenue.
mean, we only added 3 million, and 2 million of that is CPID, is the CPID development services
Yeah.
for building permits, so I mean.
Yeah,
That's your
it's just, we
difference
just
in
Like,
don't
we're
have.
basically trying to,
Right,
wean $1 million out of $1 million. You'd have to cut everything else,
Right.
yes.
except CPID.
Yeah, it's the big thing is the having to pay for the general fund portion that is not billable. That was a huge hit this year.
And is 1.4 the minimum of what they need?
Yes,
We can't-
that is, the study was very clear that is $1.4 million.
We've already lopped 1.7 down to 550,000. So I mean, I don't think we can go anymore with that, just legally.
With the lakes, with the, I know it's only like. And then the the chief deputy coroner,
Well, you know what? That communications for the ham radios, we can postpone that for a couple of years. It's something to do, but it scratches out 10,000.
You're not gonna get $1 million off this list.
I'm gonna get milk, I'm optimistic, I'm gonna get there.
Their coordinator, I mean. Exxon.
This is the boring part of the budget show.
So the Blake positions are tied to Blake funding.
Yes, they are.
I mean, the rest of them are just like, it's so little, right? It's like $12,000, 9,000.
Right.
It doesn't really make.
How come there isn't any funding source with BoCC 04? It's,
It's on
Because
line-
go ahead, Nicole.
It's line B 2307. It's just an,
307 is the revenue that goes with Blake.
that goes with Blake.
Can we start looking kind of like at the cuts, right? Because I know, for example, in CPED, they were able to do it and it was like $100,000 more. So
Right.
can we like do the ones that are, like the treasurer's, for example, he has a $12,000 cut. Can we start looking at those and see out of all of those,
Yes.
if there's where we land on,
We have a reduction package.
yeah.
So
The ones who were able to kind of maneuver it without like an actual.
So we know. Okay, so. On top of the reductions that were used already on this list to offset for asks. So are you wanting to know how that would play into the 4 million?
Yeah, I wouldn't, I know it wouldn't be much, but I think it would give us, some of them I thought were pretty basic and just a way of shifting, like the treasurers, for example, they're shifting $12,000 into the technology fund, the tech fund, right? So,
Right.
and he didn't have a cut, but he's still doing that shift anyways.
Right, so that, if we're talking about how that would play into the 4 million, then that will not change the shape of the graph. If you're talking about what can we do above 4 million,
I'm not going to the shape of the graph. I'm going towards the other
okay,
chart.
all right. I just wanted to be clear what we're doing. Wanted to know we were bringing up the right thing. So let's look at that. Share.
well, she's figuring that out. This jail food contract for 300,000,
You think that the sheriff could do that for less?
well, what I'm thinking is, cause I had to go through a lot of these exercises, and I went to the military and got MREs for $1 a pallet. A big pallet. Our military men and women eat that every day when they're in the field. And I feel it's plenty good enough for our folks as well. So I know they don't wanna do that because nobody liked them. But I really don't care. You give them an option, you meet all the calorie recommendations, all that kind of stuff is taken care of, and they are available because oftentimes they're coming up on expiration dates that don't really mean anything other than it's a marketing tool for the vendor.
And we would feed that to our inmates and our
Yep,
correction
inmates
deputies?
and the corrections, yep. Well, I did it.
I'm-
And it worked.
Know that our union would agree to that.
Well, I don't think they've got a big say in it,
Well,
as long as we meet the health requirements and the calories. And it's good enough for our military folks, so why not the rest of us? And I'll go down there and eat with them once in a while. It's terrible, but I'd do it. And that's $300,000.
All right, so I've already put up the commissioner's office and non-departmental at an amount greater than what our share would be under the new reduction model. How much was CPED able to do in what Josh brought in? Remember his reduction
Yes.
package? He was reorganizing and he'd already planned on a reorg.
So it's on page 4. Page 4 and 5.
I remember there was like 100,000 extra than what his cut was estimated.
About 222 maybe? I got a map. Hold on.
Is there a rule on the book on this one fund can't benefit another that says that a clerk standing at the counter being paid by one fund can't look over at his cohort over there and say, no, here's how you do it. That'll take, if you do this, this and this,
222.
takes him 1 minute. Does that mean he has to bill for that 1 minute?
I'm very sorry. I apologize, I'm trying to,
Okay, you try and figure
He
that
has it
out.
all in Department 36.
So it's really more.
in
So he has it all
Department
in,
36, how much is the number?
Community planning, it's
Because-
222.
Board directed under this scenario is.
Okay, and then I would exempt them from the remainder, cause they've contributed their
it's under
part.
community planning. We're looking at that.
And then who else had how much was the treasurer's?
12,000.
12,000.
12. Treasurer's already exempt.
This is based on $4 million.
A $4 million reduction.
Can you show us the graph again? If we did a $4.5 million reduction? That's 4.
That's with 4, and this is what it looks like with 4.5. Whoops, hang on. No, not that. There's 4.5. Can I hear 4250?
I mean, to me,
You'd have an
that's,
auction.
that's as low as I could go.
Okay.
Well, take
Yeah,
take 2 million out of the rainy day fund. And it gets substantially better.
So for me, the chief deputy coroner is one of the positions that I would recommend. Also,
Moving, right?
yeah, also the emergency management, the HAM, the 10, it's
Yeah.
not much, but it's
It's still 10,000.
it's still 10,000, and as time goes on, if it's something that we can swing, we'll make that
Alright.
investment.
So I'm saying no to the chief deputy coroner. That is B
B1202.
1202, thank you, that's what I need.
Then I would recommend for the food, instead of 300 going down to 275. And if they have salary savings and they need more, like,
270, that's 75%.
okay, 270.
Hang on, I'm still trying to find the ham radios.
29 AO2.
Got it. And now it's the corrections,
1101.
food, 1101, and we're gonna take that down to 270.
270, which is 75%, because their estimate was based on a full jail.
Well,
100% full jail.
that's for the food service?
Yeah,
Okay, I've made those adjustments and this is, I'm gonna change the reduction to 4250.
Wait, did I
that's
do
back
it?
to 4 million?
No, let's see,
It's like, why did it go down?
here's
Wait.
back to 4 million,
Oh, what was that in the middle that you showed?
4250.
Oh,
Go to four
I
point
never
five.
agreed to that. 4.5.
4.5.
4.5.
Yeah. Um,
Assessor Drew has his hand raised, I don't know.
I'm sorry, what?
Assessor Drew has his hand raised on the call.
Someone has his hand raised. Mr. Drew has his hand raised. So this was not intended to be an interactive, so please do not.
Okay.
This was so folks could follow along and see what you're doing.
okay, so
Can we go back to the chart then,
Yes,
using that number?
and put in the new, my mouse doesn't like this. Stop sharing this. Share screen. This. Make the reduction for 5.
So, are these updated? These are still showing the changes from the original target we sent
So
out?
this was the first email, right? So for example, the way to read this is under the scenario that we're at right now, it's $4.5 million cut. You've already identified the amounts from the commissioner's office, community planning, non-departmental, and 12,000 from the treasurer. And so the reductions, other than those offices, are showing that, for example, the assessor in your email asking for reductions, the amount was 408,000. His reduction at this point would be 289,000. In this scenario, if you don't find any other places where you want to adjust this amount.
So.
So it's this column in blue that is the current
but we do have-
reduction that is evenly spread.
But we're not sure about the sheriff and the 600.
Well, that is part of the question. Do you want to take a reduction in the sheriff's office? And we don't know right now how much the 24/7 piece of the sheriff's office is.
Oh.
You got something from Heidi?
She is not sure that the number that you have is correct, and
I'm sure it's not.
they have 27 FTEs in Department 10, so that's 422K per FTE. We need to go back and look at the numbers.
Right, I took it straight out of their budget in Munis from the codes that she sends us for patrol. So if I didn't capture something correctly, if there was something else we should have added, then that's what we need to know.
So, like to say, emergency management, I know we had an interesting conversation with them. They'd be looking at $6,000,
Yes,
not 175,000.
correct,
So that completely addresses
Ben's concern.
Ben's concern
yes.
in that sense. public defense, I remember that was one we talked about, the structure being unique. 663 was asked, that's down
Now
to
to be closer to
396.
400,
Which he submitted a plan and showed us how that's gonna look.
yes.
Okay, I'm just looking for anomalies where this is really
Well,
gonna be completely untenable. Superior Court was a big one. Cause they were being asked for 636, that's not 343. They didn't really tell us how they were gonna do that.
Right,
They said, give us the number, and that's what, but we've chopped it down by half,
Right.
basically, almost. Where else should we look for strange?
the human resources one, right? The part of that position is we're gonna be funding it through either Foundation of Public Health or Public Works,
They
whichever
got a
one.
huge exemption from this piece that you said,
that's
which
right.
is,
That's through the indirect cost plan.
so
But there's-
they're down to 44,000.
But they still get I think we still get a general fund plus because of the position where a position is gonna be transferred into another fund.
So they could, right. So their reduction could be, if you look up that human resource
Right.
specialist position, what's the value of that?
I think it was 117,
17?
yeah, I think that might be it. Specialist, no, 101, 102,
102?
yes.
So, and then we take them now off the table. Because that's more than the 43 that we would have allocated to them. So now there's 2,896,000 being allocated amongst the remaining offices.
So, but the big anomaly is still the sheriff, the law enforcement side.
It is, that is almost 600,000 reduction in the sheriff's office. And if,
That's not, that number can't be zero. It may not be 600,000, I don't know, I defer to the financial chief of the sheriff, but not every single element of their business is 24/7. And so they can't be exempted, just categorically, under the 24/7 exemption. So there's gotta be a number there, it's just a question of what's the right number that's fair.
That's right.
We haven't touched the rainy day fund. There's $4 million in it.
So if we were to transfer 2 million, I know that it's not one-time funding. Would it help in this at all, Robin?
so we can go back to the graph and see what that looks like. So if you were to put 2 million from the rainy day fund into the general fund one time in 2024,
On top of the 4.5 million cut, is that what you guys are asking?
they're asking, could we bring the 4.5
Well,
down?
then you gotta do that.
Yeah. So if we reduce the 4.5 to, let's say, 3.
Oh.
It's because it's a
Yeah, I
one-time
know.
thing and we're addressing ongoing costs. So even with that, the cut would need to, well, it wouldn't need to be 4 apparently. About 3.5 would get you to exactly cash flow in 2029.
So if we were to do 4,
You'd still be doing 4 even after you took $2 million out
Yeah,
of the rainy day fund,
well, I mean, I guess it's a difference between 4.5 and 4.
$500,000.
$5 million cut versus lopping off half of our rainy day fund, I'm not going there, so.
That running that out to 2029 to where you break even, is that assuming some kind of a flat growth from now until then, like 1% or something on revenue? What is
So
it?
what it includes, remember that your two main sources of revenue in the general fund are property tax and sales tax. Property tax, the levy increase is gonna happen no matter what the impact is on the economy. So you get 1% councilmanic levy lift every year. You raise the levy 1% plus new construction, which is approximately 2% in good years. So I've estimated the levy to increase by 3% per year, every year, into the future. Sales tax, we're seeing slow growth. Usually we get around 5% on average. This year, year to date is 2.5%. We followed for future years the Economic Forecast Council for the state of Washington, which says, in 2024, 2%, in 2023, 3%, in 2024, 4%, and then 5% in future years. And then all else, we assumed would be the same, an equal amount in future years. The ARPA revenue stops after 2024. Because at that point, the lost revenue is fully spent, so there's no more lost revenue to pull in. You have earmarked all of the ARPA money, so in case you free any more up, next year will be the last year that we can do the backfill for the new employees from ARPA. So all of those shifts that had been short-term will be done. So that's built in. And this is why we keep saying revenue's flat. Revenue is not growing. It's a slow growth. And that could be, you stated that that's possibly optimistic. So, so that's where that is.
Well, food services in the jail,
We've already adjusted that
I
to
know.
270.
but I think you can do more. I'm not kidding you. You guys think I'm BSing you, but when I was sheriff, I got kill permits from the game department and went down. One time I shot 5 elk down in Bucota, legally. Brought them back up, processed them here. Got salmon from the Nisqually tribe regularly and augmented my budget. And the health department said they'd put me in jail, but they never did, because none of it was inspected or anything. I mean, and then the MREs were next, and those were during hard times. And that's just the way it was. I didn't care if they liked it or not. So I think we can tighten up even more. It's raining out, and I know that we need to do something if we're gonna keep functioning.
Well, if we overcorrect on the sheriff's cut, he may decide that's the right approach. That's where he'll squeeze,
You might have to.
shoot some elk into,
It's kinda like.
that would
when
be his to call.
When they built the railroads, they did that with buffalo. Well, with the elk, there's plenty of them. I'm not advocating get rid of them.
Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break.
Now,
Just to like let all of this kind of sink in, kind of
we-
where we're at.
Can you print that, what we're
I absolutely can
messing
print.
around with there so we can?
Yes.
I'd like to see I'd like to see the version of the cut table with the 4.5 and all the adjustments we
Yes.
made.
I will print that now.
Send it to me, Robin, and I
Okay, it is 3:26 and we are back. And,
I do have a couple of questions that maybe you could answer. Pretty simple.
Great, and I'm looking for the printout that we
I
just
put it on your pile of papers.
put there. All right,
It's on the top of your paper right there,
go
sorry.
ahead, Commissioner.
On B 1006, funding for contracted mental health professionals, and that's $50,000. It shows 24,000 in revenue, but I'm curious why that's under general fund at all. Why wouldn't that be some kind of treatment, sales tax, or something other than general fund when we're talking about mental health services?
Okay, we're gonna look at that.
This is for our staff, it's not for
it's
inmates.
for the sheriff's, it's for the sheriff law enforcement.
Oh,
Right,
okay, for dealing with officers for bad scenes and such.
yes.
Okay,
Why it's in-
okay, got it. How about under B 1106, shift DST expenditures to general fund?
That
That's-
is because we need to make the detention sales
Yeah.
balance. The fund doesn't have enough money in it. You may recall we pulled the camera program in building reserves,
No.
and we still
And we
had
still
to bring them down. So the choice is either paid out of the general fund or reduce the positions where at minimum staffing at the jail.
B 1106. Okay,
Yes,
that makes sense.
okay.
Then down here under development services, what did we find? There's $2 million set aside for non-recoverable fees.
That's right.
Why, you've made some change, what did you change?
I'm gonna take this in parts.
Okay,
The first line is the 1.4 million. That's the amount of non-billable to building fees,
okay,
Right, non-recoverables.
development fees
Okay.
that must be paid for from the general fund.
okay.
Your option is to reduce services at the front desk and not do comp plan changes and those things that we have to pay for from the general fund. That was 1.4 million. And part two, 550, you recall that they were asking for 1.7 million, and you have reduced that 550,000 to get them to an ending fund balance of 3 months instead of the 6 months that they were seeking. Is one-time deposit.
But it's out of general fund?
It has to come out of general fund. We
Why
have no
can't
other fund.
that come out of the rainy day fund? Or,
So there
or
are
a shift?
3 reasons to hit the rainy day fund, and this doesn't fit any of them. And shift from what?
Additional shift from the road fund or diversion or something, I mean,
We can absolutely look at increasing the road levy shift. It would be a further impact on the road fund, and Public Works would need to,
well, they just cut back.
they would indeed.
Pretty-
And that's, you know, all of your budget is, you got 76 funds, they all have.
One more down here on shows revenue, the 350, the community back to 2025 program.
It's the number.
B 36-4, revenue.
The extra piece out of that. They wanted an extra 2, and we said, no, you're stuck with the grant. I remember.
So of those that you've got left to cut from because for whatever reason, as the consideration of those agencies that bring in revenue and cut after we agree with the revenue coming in?
Revenue is directly tied to their service. So, for example, elections. Elections brings in revenue that can be used for elections, we pulled that out, that's in that grant restricted. So we've done.
Right.
Here's what we didn't exempt. Also in the auditor's office, the auditor brings in licensing team, they bring in licensees. Licensees come in are not intended only to support the auditor licensing team. They're intended by the state to support the government. So we did not pull that out. That's what we didn't pull out. But if there was a direct correlation, it couldn't be used for any other purpose, we pulled it out.
What if the auditor, well, to do, not have to do for me?
Would
That-
would
there-
impact
that's-
revenue, there would.
And probably consider, I can't remember what it was, twice as many, but more than it takes to run.
I would suggest that the county would still receive license fee revenue because it would be taken in by our satellite offices that do licenses.
Well, no, not license, I'm talking about the back portion of it.
Passports, yep, passports, the auditor could indeed not do the passports. And that would impact revenue. Could you tell us how to bring in and photographs? Not a small amount. Oh, I can put that.
I think it's around more than 2 FTEs, and they do reports, they pays for 2.
Yeah, and the whole, proposal by the auditor was let's do passports because it would the FTE and county.
Okay.
The intention was to bring additional money into the county.
Yep.
The auditor is wonderful about doing. People know she has to bring more money to the county.
So now we're back to more shift or rainy day fund, one-time solution.
Or what other cuts would
Oh, you wanna know which cuts now? I did
the
found very small.
either identify where else you want to take revenue, or
This chart.
you could indeed approve the chart as it is at this point.
Really have the for law enforcement, right? If the two
So
Thompson
we-
is
Chief
agenda.
Thompson said, again, to go on record, now the cameras are rolling, Chief Thompson has informed us that only 2.4 million of the sheriff's law enforcement budget of the 24 million, only 2.4 million is not 24/7. There is a question of
That you would follow up how she calculated that.
yes.
And I would say that however much she's convinced you that to satisfaction the number needs to be reduced is just addressed with
Right, and
Fine.
to try to provide clarity on we are identifying 24/7. It is, I'd say that there's two things to consider. The first is there a graveyard shift? Where people have to show up and work that, we are in the morning, be on call. And the second is if you have people on that after you have to do overtime to backfill. If people don't show up for the shift, you just have to have overtime.
that's the key from my perspective. That's what I thought. I mean, we did with COVID and it was like 24/7 was it's just a handy term. You know what I mean? It's a little different than, it's really a little different where you were working. It's a handy term to capture the situation where if somebody didn't show up or we cut the position, you have to go out and pay overtime or in terms of other on track or whatever that looks like.
Right.
That's what we're trying to capture with what we're calling 24/7.
Right.
So as long as that's how it's calculated at the sheriff, then it is what it is. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna say that we're wrong about that, but I guess I would just say that means that their cut is $50,000 less, then
And that's distributed.
there's that, or you add to the road shift, or, I mean, what strategy you want to make to get it done. I guess what I'm saying is I like the general approach that has been taken here, and in terms of how to allocate. I feel like different elements of the department, we account for that in the exemption column we've laid out. Try to make sure nobody is unfairly impacted because of the unique funding. And the magnitude of this relates to our long-term funding, our forecast. I don't like it, but I'm trying to balance and find the middle ground.
And following up on that, one of this production, with percentage items are the proposed amount for these particular offices.
So see this purple column
Yep,
and the one right next to
right
it?
before.
Yep,
Okay.
so going down the list, because I know people can see the piece of my hand. Actually, I can share my screen. My still in there, where's my, there it is. Share my screen with this one. So
There you go. So just using the
it's
the
these two
assessor
columns.
pulling costs, could you just point out to the
The assessor, the reduction, if the board were to accept this as it is, the assessor's reduction would be, $283,754.
and the percent of the budget that's gonna be cut is gonna be that same amount? 9.8?
I could, give me a minute and I can give you a percentage there. That is, hang on. This and turn that into a percent, that's roughly 5% of his maintenance level budget. And I'm not sure if we added anything at policy level for the assessor.
Well, here there's two percentage columns.
Well,
The first one's 4%, and the second one's 10%.
So it's, so to explain those, the assessor, his maintenance level budget in 2024 is $5,481,000 plus a few dollars, which is 4.1% of the total 2024 maintenance level budget for the county.
Oh, okay, got it.
And once we do all the exemptions and the assessor has no exemptions, his budget that is subject to part of an allocation, an across the board allocation of the cut, is the full $5,481,000. And his share of the reduction, and the reduction is $4.5 million, is roughly $284,000. And that's with some offices and departments taking more than what their share would be. So
Like
his
commissioners and
reduction would
CPAC.
be 5.5%.
And non-departmental.
Non-departmental
HR.
would, the commissioner's office reduction would be 6%. The non-departmental reduction is 14%.
What would be the Superior Court?
Superior Court's reduction is 4%.
You said
The
non.
sheriff's law enforcement is 2%.
No, it says 20, doesn't it? Yeah, sheriff law enforcement says 20%.
This is pretty reasonable.
What's that?
His budget is 20% of the cut, but it's 2% of his overall budget. The reduction is only 2%
So every
of his budget
What, I mean, this
at
column,
maintenance level.
assessor's getting.
right here is what I'm referring to.
No exemptions. But even he's getting.
I know.
reduction from-
20% here.
I
It's
understand.
20% over here,
Yeah,
20% of the
So
total.
everybody else should be
this
coming
$11
in
million
2, 3, 4,
is
5.
20% of this 55. But the full amount of his reduction
Those
would
percentages
be
have always thrown me off.
590,000, which is only
I think it's
2%
about a change,
of
but
his
it's
total
about-
maintenance level budget.
Okay.
The ratio.
Which is not, it's kind of counterintuitive.
It's like a ratio.
Is there any way to have that so that that 2% is on there, I guess?
Yes, I am doing that right now.
Okay, good. That'll make it a lot easier to see what each one, which percentage each.
On this chart, yeah.
Entity.
Yeah, no, it's good to see that.
Okay.
Community planning's taking a 9% cut. Human resources is taking a 4% cut. Some are taking none. The juvenile court would be 3% of their maintenance level. Prosecuting attorney would be 3% of his maintenance level. Public defense would be 5% of their maintenance level. So as you can see, it's not like flat 4%, it's a $4.5 million
Are you,
reduction.
will you be able to print out one of these sheets with those numbers on it?
Yes,
But it basically massaged it down to 3 to 5%.
yes,
Than the ones that have some ability to do more.
yes.
But in terms of us imposing, not involuntarily, it's 3 to 5%.
Yes.
I
But
mean,
that's better than 8%.
well, I mean, it was $7 million when we first started, and it's gone down to $2.8 million. We really have tried to work with whatever and shifting whatever we had into this. I don't know what else we could do. I mean,
The question I have is if the sheriff's number needs to go way down from where it's at because of the calculation that needs to be done, where do we make that up from? We make it up from distributing it amongst all the other groups, or is there any other proposal on the table to cut something else or shift more or whatever?
So I do believe there's a proposal on the table to increase the road levy shift.
By the amount that the sheriff has to come down?
Yeah.
So that everybody else stays static?
Yeah, and let's say for a moment that the 2.4 million is accurate. So if this number, then his share would only be 148,000. This shifted everybody else up a little.
Like the assessor gets kicked up to what, 338? Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah, but if I undo that,
It's $50,000.
and leave all of these stagnant, we'd have to shift about another 400,000 roughly out of the road fund. And leave everybody else the same.
This column of percentages here on the far right, almost the far right,
Yeah,
right here, what do they denote? I don't have a
That
good understanding
is
of that.
the percent see, this is how much the budget's gonna be reduced. After you pull out, the people who are gonna put more than their share in,
Okay,
here's how much has to be spread, and this is their share of this spread.
okay, and that's what I'm trying to figure out. So this one is the sheriff's share.
You got 20% of this $2.9 million.
And
13% of the 2.9 million.
okay, okay. So it's all based on this 2.9 right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would also add that, if we are fortunate and the public safety sales tax passes, then we'd have to examine in public defense, the prosecutor's office and the sheriff's office, how much of this would have to be taken off the table to maintain funding levels, to maintain a maintenance of effort and avoid supplanting. So we'd have to be taking a look at that. So we may be coming back to you in the event that tax passes to balance that a bit, but other than that, that would be a good problem to have.
So going back to the DST expenditures to general fund, the 250 and the 500, that's the minimum we could go in order to keep that.
Oh, yeah, you can't, we've got to get that much out of there. You can't
Try.
make that less.
I wanted
We
to
already
make
whittled
less.
that down.
We dropped it by half.
Yeah.
Now, we still haven't finalized whether we're gonna make any more of a shift or diversion, right? We have it here, but
We haven't finalized it, no.
we haven't finalized that yet, right?
Right.
Okay.
So if you're good with these numbers and all the other offices and departments and give us direction to the extent that we have to reduce the sheriff, that we would increase the road levy shift, then we're done. And the budget team would need to set a deadline for these offices to put their reductions into Questica. They must identify, they cannot figure it out later. They have to identify how they're gonna do it, and salary savings is not an acceptable method.
It has to be an ongoing reduction.
Yes. And we don't have unfunded FTEs, so we can't reduce personnel.
But you're saying we need to just do another 400,000 shift, I think, to cover that sheriff's part.
To cover the sheriff, up
But
to
isn't there
400,000.
something similar to cover the prosecuting attorney and?
No, there is not.
No.
You're
Okay.
proposing that,
Okay. no,
unless we'd like to revisit these numbers, and that's what I'm asking you.
Okay, but then what about a $1 million out of the rainy day fund, a one-time $1 million out of there, when we know it's one time, won't be around for 25, it'll only be around for 24. And 400,000 out of the road directed at the sheriff to solve that problem. What would that $1 million make a difference here? Cause I think that would make it a little easier pill to swallow. And then everybody knows for 25 what's coming. They didn't know what was coming, say in January of 23. But now they'll know what's coming in January of 25. We do. I'm not saying right way or the wrong way. I'm just saying it is the way we can let them understand.
suggesting +4.
Hang on.
But that's just covering what? Reduction in the cut, so that's a lot.
That's exactly right.
Asking about applying $1 million of rainy day money to that,
Okay.
it's not gonna be too much.
And are you suggesting we reduce the cut by that much? By a
Yeah.
million?
Yeah,
That's the other piece of what he's saying.
yeah.
So you're taking away $1 million of ongoing cuts and substituting $1 million
And
of
this
one
is what
time.
it looks like.
It's gonna look bad, yeah.
It doesn't buy you stability.
You know, to me, the model, the compromised model that we have tentatively landed on, based on where it's been in the recent couple of years, together with the doubling essentially of the road fund levy shift, is our board's commitment to trying to reduce the impact on our departments. I mean, to me, it's a major reach by us to reduce impacts. So I hope it's seen that way, because that's how I feel about it, so.
I don't think any of us like it, but it's just part, it's, so tomorrow we're taking the vote, or?
You bring breakfast?
So what's the
It'll
next
be
step?
about 6
I have
o'clock.
to be at Capitol at 7:45, so I'll have to meet at 6.
Are you good?
So what's,
So,
I mean, we don't have the, the numbers for the sheriffs really, right? Like, and what that impact would be.
it's going to be somewhere between
200 and 600.
two to 400,000.
And, but that impacts everyone else though.
No, what is being suggested is if the sheriff goes down to the extent he goes down, we increase the road levy shift.
Rather than generally across the board.
Right. And everyone else would stay where they're at
Stay
right
the
now.
same.
We basically lock in these numbers for the other departments.
And then when will we be able, look at, Elizabeth is here to give us some advice. She's found a solution. You won the lottery.
Just gotta take it.
And when will will the preamble to the budget be ready to talk about? That we'll have a story to tell
2 weeks.
Yeah.
in 2 weeks.
She said 2
She
weeks.
said 2 weeks.
said
I heard
2
her say
weeks.
that too. 2 long weeks, right?
Okay. I mean, unless something changes,
You're good with where it's at?
No,
not really, but I mean, do we have another choice, right? Like, it is what it is at this point. Like, I don't see,
I would like to have the column of percentage that means what they're taking in a
I will
reduction.
print that
done.
out. I've got that. I can print it
Okay,
out.
can you do that?
She hasn't sent me.
Because I think
Absolutely.
it helps tell the story.
Yep. So, I recall a year with Governor Gregoire when she said, I hate my budget, but it's the right thing to do. So,
Yeah, I think that's the shape we're in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Boy,
so this is where we land. We will
And then we're-
prepare, so
and so in 2 weeks, what happens in those 2 weeks? Like, does it,
Yeah, so next steps, Nicole.
Next step, so Robin's saying 2 weeks, that's November 10th. The budget book is published on November 20th. So she's asking for us to give you a story in 2 weeks, so we
A
can come up
high-level
a high-level
summary.
story. So we can do that in 2 weeks, bring back a highlights, if you would say, of what we've been discussing and how the economy is working and the decisions that we came about. So we can produce that in about 2 weeks.
Okay, and if there are changes at that time,
If there, we are down to the
Wired.
wire on time, so we'll produce a highlights book in about 2 weeks.
About 2 weeks.
What's the end of the week of the 10th?
The week of the 10th, so.
The week of the 10th is a Friday.
It's a
so-
Friday.
The 10th is
Oh,
Friday?
that's what she-
And
yes.
that's a holiday, so
Alright.
next Monday.
Next
So-
Monday's the 13th.
So highlights book in 2 weeks,
Preliminary book.
publish the preliminary budget in 3 weeks.
Yes,
If we should fail at the voting booth, then, we'll have clearly the items that you identified, only if it's public safety, sales tax will come out of the book. Then, once it's published, we have the public hearings on December,
4th and 5th,
including the revenue hearing,
that's correct.
and
On the 12th, yep, we'll certify the levy, and then on the 15th, we'll adopt the budget.
And when do directors and elected officials need to notify you of what positions are going away
for
due to this?
positions, or, now I'm gonna open this up, it doesn't have to be positions, they can identify other ongoing reductions in the amount that we've specified. Doesn't have to be FTEs if they can identify other ongoing, never to be returned cuts.
Cuts, yes.
Then that we have to have them in our system. If we're gonna have a highlights book in 2 weeks, they have to be in early next week.
Yes, that is correct,
So would you say by close of business on Tuesday?
the 31st.
Trick or treat.
Yeah, trick or treat. Wednesday at the absolute latest, we cannot give extensions.
Okay, and then,
Produce a book or we're in violation of state law.
a follow-up question, I don't know if it came from John Thunheim, possibly, there was some talk here, and I really don't recall exactly, having to do with, are we eliminating FTEs or are we defunding FTEs
No.
that sometime in the future we might choose to fund? Are we gonna
You-
create those all
We,
over again?
we will not have this, the county has a policy of no unfunded FTEs.
Okay,
So we are not defunding FTEs and leaving them on the books. If the offices and departments should choose to take their reduction by defunding a position, we will eliminate that position. So we are eliminating positions, and in the future, what you could do is if everything turns around, we could put a proviso in the budget that says last out, first in with the restoration. Let's say the economy totally turns around and performs exceeding everybody's expectations, we got a ton of money coming in, then you could choose that these reductions would be the first thing that you'd restore, including any FTEs.
Commissioner
okay,
Edwards,
is it
I
all legal?
go buy the winning lottery ticket.
It's his birthday yesterday, you should have bought it
I
yesterday.
know, right?
Yeah, cause it was a miracle I survived. Okay.
I think it still counts. The miracle wish is still there.
Okey doke.
Okay, well, what happens if offices or departments don't put specifics by next Tuesday.
That puts us in the position of having to identify where the cuts come from, and we have to do it by object. And we don't want to do that. They know the best places that they
Yeah.
can bring down their budget amounts. Please do not put us in that position.
So this has been a week of deliberations, and we've gotten to a point where we can at least jump off from here and produce a book and be able to express to the different offices and departments. I saw Robin put her hands up.
If
I
I
do
had
think,
5 minutes, I could give you where the latest sales tax
okay,
revenue is.
I do think depending on how this preamble is written, I think it'll help as we move forward. But I know it's putting a lot of pressure on you guys to make that all fit, the necessity and maybe a little bit about what we're up against and, but I do think telling the story properly helps.
Yes.
I'll get you the latest sales tax number. It's gonna take me a little longer than I thought it might.
Okay.
All right, so before you adjourn, I wanna express deep appreciation for the budget team. They have put in tons of extra hours in the last few months to get us to this point, so great job, you guys. And to all of the financial staff throughout the county, because if it were not for them, we could not have gotten to this stage. And to all of the officials, both elected and appointed, they all have, this has been hard for everyone, and I appreciate all the work that everyone in the county's put into this, so thanks to everybody.
And one more thing before we close up shop, thank you, Robin. But, we had a discussion, just a very tentative discussion yesterday about animal services and what we may or may not do. And at some point, we should have some kind of a decision to pass on to them as to what is going to take place. They're in the middle of their budget.
We did not reduce the
So,
county payment at
that's-
this time.
That's the way we're gonna leave it for now, is
We
that?
need to see a turnaround in performance on their part. My
We got some
suggestion.
new preliminary numbers from Joint Animal Services, which we are gonna put into the budget, and ends up being a close to $100,000 reduction because we have $1 million currently budgeted in baseline. So it did go down close to $100,000 with the proposed numbers from Joint Animal Services.
So at some point, if things don't pan out right, in a couple of weeks, is there any, restriction about us bringing up some of these things that are gonna be adversely affected, and that could be one of them?
We could certainly review that in the First Amendment of next year, if we get new information. So you're gonna have public hearings on December 4th and 5th. And then we'll have follow-up discussion if you hear anything in the public hearings, if we find anything that's not quite right in the budget, if we get new information. At that time, you have an opportunity to change something about the budget before you adopt it. So December 6th, you
Okay.
can review it, and after that, it would be in the First Amendment.
Not sure if we can reach out to Sarah Hawk, right? And maybe at that public hearing, she can provide us updated information on how, she says she's worked with TCOM. She said that they're doing that 24-hour service, right? So it'd be good to have that information, being that it would have been 2 months that this is in place, and see if it's working or if it's not. And if it's not, the board can
plan for some
plan
change.
for something, yeah, plan for some change, but maybe hearing those statistics there.
Yeah, I mean, it was just hearing the details of what would need to happen for us to go back. First of all, I don't like the flip-flop. I don't like that. I like to be more consistent than that. We're in tight times. I mean, if we could say, this decision, we're not getting the service, saves us $450,000, I would have been very tempted. But given what she said about the profile of calls, that would all have to be recalibrated, then it would have to go back and the ILA would have to be changed and approved by all the partners of the other, it was a big rigmarole to do that back in the day. And it would be it would be truly a process, and it would not be, what I heard was, we'd probably be looking at a couple $100,000. So, and a delay and a long process, and given all of that, I kind of, and the fact that we could reduce the 100 by 100,000, I'd kind of like to see if, because the answer to me is not a sheriff's office, animal services team, so I'd really like to see this solved rather than trying to reinvent a wheel that we're not cut out to invent. So that kind of backed me off of where, because I was kind of thinking coming into that, it's like, I don't think we're gonna be able to keep, we're just not getting, we haven't, and Sarah freely admitted, we haven't been getting what our increased investment was designed to pay for. But that may change as they've staffed and worked out, deal with TCOM and having quarterly meetings with the sheriff, I don't know.
Yeah, I think we need that information because and maybe we do need an estimate. Maybe she can bring that, like, if we were to pull out, like, what would that, like, how much would it save us, right? Would it just be 100,000 or would it be 400,000? Because we need to know the savings of that as well. And how much funding we would get back but when we approved this, right, when we voted for it, it was just as a pilot to see if it was gonna work. And I just haven't seen the results of that. I mean, we made it very clear, this is just a pilot to see if it's gonna work out. And there were expectations there, and it's been 2 years. And understanding that hiring has been a struggle, but it's just been this whole miscommunication between the sheriffs and JASCOM, and no one's getting on that same page, and, it's just like, well,
I guess what I was not clear about, and at some point we may need advice from council about when we went back to full funding, what was the legal process there? Did we just throw out that ILA that reduced Thurston County's share and had to calibrate? Or did we say it was temporary and we could just go right back and go back to where we were? Or is that a whole nother starting from scratch? I mean, I just don't know. Sarah made it sound like, oh no, that was like, ILA was changed, that's water under the bridge. If you wanna negotiate some different deal, we have to sit down, what services do we want, based on how much are those, and recalibrate the whole formula we can't just go, she was making it sound like we could not just go back to where we were without a big, long, involved process.
Elizabeth, not to put you on the spot or anything, but you remember anything about the JASCOM,
Which,
the animal services?
the agreement?
Yeah,
The agreement that we had for many years and we basically restored full funding 2 years ago. And the question is, could we go back to the old agreement, or is somehow that's burned up and ash into the wind?
Yeah,
No.
I don't have any input for you on that. I could look into it if you're interested.
Well, we're not quite there yet, but it came up in our meeting with JASCOM.
More to come, sounds like.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for bearing with us and working through this process, and we'll take this information and move forward with it.
Is that it?
what time we're adjourned?